Page 34, Chord Etude. On this page, they're introducing you to a chord called the G7 chord. Let's talk about the G7 chord briefly. You know that we're talking three-note chords, and in a three-note chord, when the notes are every other note, the bottom note tells you the name of the chord. Like here's C chord, every other note, C is the bottom note, so it's the C chord. D chord, E chord, F, G, A, B, okay. Well, the G7 chord, first let's start with a G chord, which means every other note with G on the bottom. Here, well, it'll go down here. It could be anywhere, it doesn't matter. But here, G's on the bottom and it's every other note. That's a G chord. Then we add the seventh, the referring to the interval of a seventh. And it's from the bottom note of the chord. So we need a seventh from the bottom note of the chord. The bottom note of the chord is here. I'm going to go up a seventh. 1, 2. Remember the note I'm on is 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now I got a 4-note chord. So a 7 chord, any 7 chord, G7, C7, E7, whatever, it's a 4-note chord. Every other note and the bottom note identifies the chord, but again, we've added the seventh. And that's because that distance is an interval of a seventh. And that's the chord we're talking about. That's the real chord we're talking about. That's not the arrangement of the notes we're going to use. It could be, some pieces will use this arrangement. That's all right. It's just we're not using that right now. First off, we only want 3 notes, not 4, so we're going to leave out a note. We can leave out either of the middle notes, either one. We got to have this, or we don't have a 7th chord. So I can do this, or I can do this. Normally, we leave out the D, and it's here. But sometimes we leave out the B. Now, if I have a C chord, and then I want to go to a G7 chord, I don't want to have to move my hands so much. That's not bad there. But still, I want to leave my hand where it is if possible. So I rearrange the G7 chord so I don't have to move. So what I'm going to do here is I'm simply going to take the G and put it on top here. And I got this arrangement. Because if you'll notice, the C chord is right there. They're right there together. So I don't move my hand. Do it in both hands. Those chords go together. They sound good. Now, another way of looking at it is when you're in this position and you want the G7 chord, you simply, the bottom note goes down a half step. Remember, half steps, just one half step, and you use the top 2 notes in the hand position to here. So it's here. Well, that means we got a couple new notes to learn in the music. If you look at the bottom of the page on page 34, now we have the B's to deal with. In the treble clef, we're talking about the B right below middle C. So the B is right under that ledger line where middle C was. Memorize it. You need to know that note. And the thumb's going to cover both of these. Yeah. And in the bass clef, the B we're talking about is the next to the bottom line here. That's a B. This B, the middle C is here and it's here. So you need to know that note too. So we're adding 2 new notes in the music for you to memorize now. Know what those notes are. And again, the little finger comes in. You see, in a 5-finger position, any 5-finger position, I'll go here. The thumb or the little finger needs to cover 2 notes here, here. So they're busy covering 2 notes. This way we can actually span out 7 notes if we need to. The outside fingers sometimes need to cover an extra note. Keep that in mind. Now, remember that we said the C chord could be called the tonic chord because each of these, in the key of C or any key, each step in the key has a name. Well, the fifth step, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in the key of C, or in any key, the fifth step is called the dominant. So if I'm in the key of C and I want that G7 chord, I could call that a 5/7 chord in the key of C, because it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's built on the fifth step of the scale. So it could be the 5/7 chord. And it's also known as the dominant 7 chord, because dominant is the fifth step. You're liable to hear either one, and I'm liable to say either one. So just be aware that it has a name too. And as far as the Roman numeral number, it's a V for Roman numeral 5. So it'd be a V7 for 5/7. In the key of C now. Now let's talk chord etude. It's simply an etude. Remember, an etude is a study piece, and this is an etude on a chord, the G7 chord. We're using the C chord. You look at the first measure here, these notes, that's a C chord. And then the next chord is a 5/7 chord. They're telling you the little finger goes down. I already told you that. And then the right hand gets it too. And that's really all it is. That's all this is these chords. Block chord or broken chord in this pattern. Because you remember, a broken chord could be in any pattern, but this is what we're using. So let's look chord etude over. It's 2 lines long, but it has a repeat sign, so it's actually 4 lines long. Treble and bass clef 3/4 times, so we're only counting to 3. We got quarter notes and dotted half notes and some tied notes. We can deal with that, I hope. I'm going to take both hands together because it's only one hand or the other playing at a time. So the left hand is here on the C chord, and the right hand is here. We're in C position here. And it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Again, with the chord, you're lifting up. So when I'm done with the C chord there in the second measure, I lift up. Before I go on, there'll be a little silence. That's okay, because I'm using the same finger. 2, 3. And that's what it is. The last 2 measures of the second line, all 3 of the notes are tied, so you hold that down for 6 counts. Once you have the notes and rhythms okay, no hesitations, at any speed you choose, then add in the articulation, which in this case they give you slurs. They're not phrases, they're not musical sentences so much. I guess they could be, but we're just going to connect the note. You can't connect this. You can't connect a repeated note, but you do the best you can. Lift up. There's just a little more silence when you lift up than you do on a repeated note. Lift up. Lift up. Lift up. So we have that little lift before and after each of these slurs in this one. These could be very short sentences too. For the chords on the second line, the last 4 measures, these chords, just connect them as best you can. There's no slur there or nothing, but pretend there's a big long slur over it and connect them as best you can. Then the dynamics, well, MF, mezzo forte, is moderately loud, sort of loud. You decide what that is. It's just sort of loud. That's the whole thing. Because there really is no melody, it's just a bunch of broken chords. Otherwise, I'd say bring out the melody. Well, it's all melody, or none of it's melody, I don't know. Just bring it all out. As far as how fast you take it, that's up to you. But just make sure it's even and smooth. I'd like to play it with you slowly. Let's double check we have all the right notes and rhythms. I'm going to give us 3 counts, and I'm going to repeat it. 1, ready, go. 1, 2, 3. 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, tie, 2, repeat, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3,